Hi, and welcome back to Stock Talk. This is Joe Rabil with Rabil Stock Research. So one of the things I like to do is buy stocks on weakness or recommend stocks on weakness to my institutional clients when they're looking at stocks coming into support. So I want to show you a specific trade methodology that I would use using MACD divergence and doing it in multiple time frames. I think it's pretty powerful. Let's go ahead and get into this agenda. So yeah, I want to look at MACD divergence, which would be basically the middle time frame. In this case, I'm going to use a weekly chart. And then what we want to do is look at the higher time frame and the lower time frame to really help us. The lower time frame is going to help us with the trigger. The higher time frame is going to help us evaluate whether it's a good signal or not. Not all divergences are going to be great signals. Some of them are just really quick trading moves. Others can be signs that we're really getting in at an excellent entry point. So let's go ahead and get into this lesson. Okay, I've got 3 time frames up: monthly on the left, weekly in the middle, and daily on the right of AOS. And I want to show you how you can use different MACD signals to help identify and when to really, well, first of all, to help identify what are the best setups when it comes to divergence. That's number one. And number two, the best way to time them, in my opinion. All right. And we have to use multiple time frames for this. So let's go through and discuss this. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to zero in on each one of the time frames for a second. So the first, I've boxed out, and let me just go back. So I've boxed out the area that's under discussion here. This is the divergence pattern on the weekly chart, which is really the trade time frame in this case. But let's take a look at the higher time frame. So as this is pulling back, look at how this is coming into this 50 area. Now, if you go back to one of my earlier lessons I did on pools of money and how this is pulling back, and we've got this massive pool of money that's traded sideways. 50 kind of acted as resistance for the most part, and then it broke away through that. But we're coming into that zone, that area. But look at what's going on to MACD. MACD was really overbought away from the zero line, and now it's worked its way back down. It was working its way back down and even getting a little undercut of the zero line. But I don't mind that at all when there's a lot of separation between that and the signal line. There's a pretty good chance that we're going to start to find support near that zero level. So we have that on the higher time frame. That's telling me that we're coming into support. Now, the key thing that I want to tell you and get across is that if you're going to play divergence on the higher time frame, so what you want is to play it. You want to play divergence in the direction of the trend or into major support on the higher time frame. All right. So in either of the cases where if you got divergence as this is trending to the upside and you got divergence on the weekly chart or the daily chart, that's really how to play a bullish divergence to the upside, because you have this long-term support level underneath and a trend in place, and you're basically playing into trend support. That's a greatest way to play divergences. The second best way to play divergences is coming into big support zones on the higher time frame. So I do this all the time with my institutional clients when they're coming in and they want to buy. They don't necessarily want to wait for confirmation. They want to buy when it's down. They love the company. They want to buy when it's down and in support. And I'm constantly looking for this combination where MACD is coming into support. And let's go back now, and then we go to the weekly chart. And at that point, we have this drop to the downside and then a rally, and then we move down again, and MACD does not confirm. One other point I did want to make on the ADX, see, this is coming down, but the ADX is not moving. You see how ADX is still staying low through this decline phase? So that's another little piece of evidence that's telling us that we can be interested in playing a move back to the upside. But we've got the weekly chart with divergence here, higher bottom here with a lower bottom here. We have divergence in ADX, but I'm looking more at MACD in this scenario. And what we want to do is, as this is coming down and getting stretched away from the 18, we want to see because we know on the higher time frame we're coming into a big support area. This is huge support. So again, I'm thinking about this as being a little bit more aggressive. Do I really want to wait for confirmation and buy this up here on a undercut and rally type pattern, or getting back above the 18 and forming a pinch or something like that? No, I want to take advantage of this move down here and buy when it's down and stretched away. But I can't do it on this time frame. I don't really have enough evidence on this time frame to do it. So what I'm going to do is go down to a daily chart. And if we look at what happened on this chart, we get a big drop. Now this is the second leg down. So we have the big first leg down, and then we get the second leg down. And during that, we can look at our 1, 2, 3. We can draw on our trend line. We broke the trend line. We actually undercut it a little bit and then came back up. It gapped up through and then came back down. But look at this is really where the entry is. We'll zero in a little bit. We got a 2 to 3 bar pullback with an inside bar with a pinch play here, and ADX starting to die out a little bit. And I know I'm coming into this massive support area on the monthly. I know I have divergence on the weekly. This is the best combination where you're getting a reversal in the trend. I'm getting a 1, 2, 3 reversal in the trend on the daily chart. And I know on the weekly chart, I have a divergence in place. Do you see that? We have this decline, and then on this second leg down, that's where we're creating this divergence pattern. That's where we're creating this reversal pattern. So we get divergence here, and we get a reversal here, and it's into pretty big pool of support here with a zero line reversal. So I've got zero line reversal, MACD divergence, and pinch play. I've got 3 different things not triggering, but setting up all at the same time. That's the kind of combination that when you're using multiple time frames, you're not looking for the exact same thing every time. I know every now and again I'll talk about the 2 time frame pinch play, and I do love that pattern, but in most cases, you're going to find different setups in MACD in different time frames that's going to be the most timely. All right. Use this to your advantage, and then make sure you're looking at price support and key levels, or whether the long-term trend is up. And if that's the case, then using this pattern that I'm showing you here is even more powerful. All right. Let's go ahead and get into the analysis. Just briefly, my services can be found at rabilstockresearch.com. If you have an interest in the individual package, it has about 2 to 3 reports each week, plus a special video for that package, as well as the fact that you will automatically be enrolled into the trading course. All right. So let's go ahead and get into the individual stock requests that came through. Okay, so I like to start out with an index. I'm staying focused in on the spider just based on the current activity, but I do want to focus in on a couple things that I think are a little bit different. So let's just start with the monthly chart, because look at what has taken place here. When we broke down through the 18-month line, which was several months ago, we're going up about a year now since we broke through the 18-month line, and we found support at the 40-month line. And we've basically just been bouncing around between these 2 lines for almost a year. It's 11 months total, I believe. And we did have one close below. We haven't had a close above, but this line was rising so strongly that there really wasn't much downside continuation at that point. And really, the bulk of the time we've been spending trading between and bouncing around between these 2 lines. And we just bounced off this line from the upside, and then we just bounced off this line from the downside. I know we didn't quite reach it, but close enough. So that's one thing. But while that has been taking place, we had the MACD turn down at the same time and was way overbought. Just really, really stretched away from the zero line. And we've spent all this time, and now this line has worked off pretty significantly. And not only that, we could look at this as a reverse divergence type of signal. This has dropped down below this low. Now, normally I don't like to look that far apart, but in this case, because this was such a long, uninterrupted run, you could take this last bottom and compare it, or even looking at this low and compare it, and you can see we're making a higher bottom here and a lower bottom here. So, when I look at that, I'm looking at this and realizing that, yes, it can still go down. I mean, I'm not saying that this is it's all systems go to the upside. I really want to see us get through this 18-month line to the upside. but I think there's a lot less risk than there was even 6 months ago, just because of how much time this is spent, and we have worked off the overbought condition somewhat. I mean, not completely. It is possible this is setting up for another leg to the downside, but I would be leaning a little bit more towards maybe this wants to rally a little bit more. Now, part of the reason why I'm saying that is that this is when I've worked with hedge funds for a long time, and guys who short stocks are notoriously impatient. They get impatient if they're not getting paid. They don't like to hang around, and the bears have been handed some pretty nice material here over the last 2-3 weeks with the banking problems. The Fed said everything you wanted to say if you were a bear, and the market just doesn't want to go down. So with that, let's look at the weekly, because one of the things that I've been talking about to my subscribers is how, and something that just recently has taken place, is when we get a really low reading in ADX, and it's dropped down under 10 now. You see that's 9.56. The last time we got a really low reading like this was right at the peak. Okay, now we know that ADX it doesn't care which direction you're going. It's a non-directional indicator, and we have both of these DI lines really low right now. So we do need some confirmation in terms of direction, but I think you need to be prepared that this is not going to stay down for very long. This is not going to be this low for that long. So we should be getting ready for some kind of a move taking place, and I would think it's going to be pretty soon, and it might be starting right now. So the way I would look at it is last week we formed a little pinch play here where MACD crossed over and we got a little pullback towards the 18. Now, I didn't view this as being all that great of a signal because the DI lines really didn't look very good. If green DI had crossed above and held while this was going on, I'd feel a little bit better about playing this move. But we have low ADX on the monthly, low ADX on the weekly, low ADX on the daily chart, and now ADX has been low ADX. Look, this has been low for quite a while here, and now it's trying to cross above 25. So my rule of thumb is when we have low ADX in back-to-back time frames, you wait for the lower time frame to cross above, let this show a little bit more strength, and then buy the first pullback after this line has crossed above 25, or as it's crossing above 25. So I would be watching for the next pullback as a potential move back up into this area, this prior peak. Now, the reason why I'm a little hesitant to want to call this some kind of a big move is that we're still dealing with this resistance up at 40, it's 4,200 on the S&P, and the 18-month line, which is around 4160 right now. So I want to see if I'm going to believe that we're going through this with a vengeance, I need to see better momentum. Right now, we just don't have it. I mean, we've got it starting to show up on the hourly, but that's about it. So those are kind of some key things. Look at how long this is spent going sideways in here, and it hasn't broken down. Look at how low the ADX has gotten recently. We got to be expecting a move, some kind of a significant directional move is going to take place here pretty soon. Okay, let's look at Bitcoin real quick, because there's somewhat of a theme as I went through and looked at some of these symbols. So I wanted to make sure I kind of covered this because it fits into the theme as well. Let's look at let's just look at the monthly and the weekly together. If you notice, we had this 18-month line declining, but we got pretty far away, and we started to come into price support here. You see how this is basically coming back to the original breakout area of the prior highs. And so we were stretched away coming into support on this time frame, okay? Now, if we go to the weekly chart, we started to finally turn things around where we got this 18 starting to flatten, and then look, the first time we pull back and hold the 18. Look, this was sort of failure at the 18. This is where it turned down, and all through this period it was falling, and now we're rising, and this was the first pullback, and that was this kind of sharp pullback here, and then we get a sharp move back to the upside. So I guess the point I'm making is that we have the weekly trend starting to show some signs of improvement, but the monthly is going to be resistance up here. So just to point this out, up around 31, 32,000, 33 potentially, something like that, I think is the target area for this move. Now, it might not go up that far. Maybe it only reaches 30, but right now, I think you have to have a positive bias. We've got MACD showing improvement. We've got green DI showing enough improvement that we could continue to carry for now. And on the daily chart, you're getting confirmation. This move to the upside showed pretty good momentum characteristics, and green DI during the pullback held above 25. So we probably want to carry higher a little bit more. What I want to caution you against is getting real comfortable here, because we are going to come into a problem area that I believe is going to cause this to either go sideways or send it back down. I don't think this is going to V out of the monthly, meaning just go down and then go straight back up and go ripping through all this resistance. So expect this to carry a little bit more and then have some issues. Let's look at the Fang Plus Index. Same theme essentially here. We have a declining 18-month line that we got stretched away from, and we essentially developed a pretty good bottoming pattern. If you notice here, we got a pinch play develop right off this low on this higher bottom. All right, and then we get a pretty decent sized move to the upside where MACD crosses above the zero line. You see how it's been below the zero line? And look at what happened. So we had this sort of little topping pattern here where we were contained between the 18 and the 40 week. Let's look at this really for a few minutes. You come down here and you channel in here while the 18's rolling over. Then you get a harsh move to the downside, and then you get the perfect sell signal. 18 crosses down below the 40, both lines falling. Pinch play to the downside. ADX confirming, and then you get a nice leg to the downside. Now, look at what's going on this time. Now we got to move to the upside, cross above the zero line. You get a pinch play, pull back to the 18 while it's crossing above the 40 with improving green DI and ADX. So we're getting the inverse of what's taking place here. Do I think it's as powerful as this move to the downside? I really don't, and the reason is that when that happened, we had already broken the 18-month and it was kind of testing it. This, we're just getting through the 18-month right now. I expect this to move higher and then kind of channel or pull back or consolidate. I'm not expecting this to just take off and rip through the 18-month and start a trend. You don't typically start a trend when you're driving through a declining moving average. You need to come back and test or consolidate. Okay, let's look at Square. I had a question about Square regarding this pullback, and was this a buyable pullback? Because it was a pinch where it was pinching in towards the signal line, the MACD was, but look at how it was doing right at the zero line. So when I see that right at the zero line and the signal line is below, I'm a little more suspect. The other thing that I want to point out here is that we're in a severe downtrend. So this mimics the 18-month line, and we're in this ferocious decline, and we rally up. So when I see that, I'm kind of looking at this prior peak and saying, you know what? I mean, that's probably a problem area. We've gone up and tested it, and then the second time up. So I don't know that I want to play a move right underneath that key level. So I'm more inclined to believe that that is not a signal that I'm just not interested in that. As far as the trigger goes, yeah, this was not a bad trigger. I think that was a zero line reversal with low ADX. I don't have a problem taking that trigger. The problem I have is, do I really want to focus in on this based on all the resistance we have and the fact that we had already made sort of a double top up there? Okay, let's look at EOG, because we are showing some improvement in some of the energy stocks, but what I would look for are the ones that didn't have this really deep sell-off below their 18-week. Now, the good news about this one is that we have a ton of support at 100. I don't think this wants to break 100. You can see the way this is developed, but what's going to happen, I think, is that this is going to rally up and then run into some problems up here, 125, and consolidate. I don't think it's ready to just rip through that and start a new trend. Just based on what the MACD is doing, the fact that red DI was able to climb above 25 and get the ADX rising a little bit, I just think it's going to take some time. It doesn't mean the pattern is rolling over. I mean, I actually think in the bigger picture pattern, this is going to be okay. And I do think there's a lot of support at 100, but I don't think there's any rush to be messing with this. Okay, let's look at Humana. We've got a pullback on the monthly chart. What's missing here is we had this move, and look at this last leg. Looks pretty good when you look at it on a price basis, even on a MACD basis, but you couldn't even get green DI to cross above 25. You see how it crossed above 25 here? It just barely got above here. This was really strong. Those are the kind of things that I'm looking for continuation. So I'm not saying that this can't rally back up, but it's probably not a focus for me because of what that ADX line did. So if I'm looking at it from a monthly and a weekly, I don't think I'm all that interested in playing this trigger. The trigger would be, a trend line break. So it tried to do that and didn't really get through, but I'd look for something more definitive anyway. But the reality is that I think I can go find something that has better strength on the monthly chart. Airbnb. Now this one intrigues me. Okay, this is really kind of interesting the way this is playing out, because we had this kind of nasty area here. And we actually came back up through found support in the midpoint of this big, huge bar where it opened from. But the most important factor for me is, again, what's going on here. We're running into the 18-month line here. But look at what's forming on the weekly. We had a really strong move. Look at the ADX and the MACD. I mean, this is confirming evidence that we're showing signs of real improvement. Go back and look at the Fang index. You can look at the Bitcoin even. And both of these showing the same pattern where we had a strong move and a pullback and the 18 was cupping around with this type of improvement. Now look at what's going on the daily chart. We've got a really orderly pullback. And how do I know it's orderly? Is because the MACD, which was overbought, just came down and is hovering right near the zero line. We have no sign of strength in the sellers. The ADX is really, really low during the decline phase. I'd be very interested in playing this. Now, typically I would look at a trend line break, but because it would be a little steep, you could look at it this way. I mean, if it broke that trend line like that, to me, that was a little premature. I would probably now be looking for this to come back up through 125. I think that would be the trigger for me. It would almost be like a form of a 1, 2, 3 pattern. But when the trend line is really steep, I normally look at a horizontal line as a trigger. All right, so this is definitely one I would be watching. So ULTA, pretty interesting here. Powerful look on the weekly chart. One of the things that bugs me a little bit is during this decline, the MACD is kind of crossing over a little bit. And I wouldn't be surprised if this wanted to maybe consolidate a little bit more, work sideways a little bit more before it's ready to take off. So, but what do you do when you have a good signal here? Really, everything about this is a pretty strong quality signal. What I would do in this instance is, so that I don't get stopped out in case this wiggles a little bit, I would give it a little bit more room. Typically, I probably maybe give it right underneath this low. I probably wouldn't go right underneath the moving average this low, but I probably want to give it this bottom for now. And then if we consolidate a little bit and it goes to a new high, then I'd be willing to raise the stop underneath there and get it a little bit tighter. Okay, ITW. So this triggered, and let's just look at this. So it's another one where we have a move up and a pullback, and there's overrun on this time frame. Now, the reason why I'm interested in this is because the ADX is strong. In this instance, we had a overrun on this time frame, but it went into the zone and came out. Okay, it went into the zone and came out and then turned back up. So I view this as a second entry where we went back above this moving average, came back down, tested the low, and turned things around to the upside. So, you could still look at this as a higher bottom here, but I think there's a lot of improvement in what's going on. And the other thing that I like is the fact that the relative strength has remained strong. If you go through and look at a lot of industrial stocks, there were much deeper pullbacks than this. So we have to take that into account. Now, sticking on the theme, look at what's going on in the ARK Innovation Fund. So we have this distance to the 18-month. In this case, we have room to get to the 18-month because it's been so stretched. Even the prior high is up, up above 50, and the stock's at 39 right now. So I'm viewing this as a trading play, nothing more than a trading play, because we have a declining 18-month. I'm not looking for a big reversal in the long-term trend yet. I think it's too early. But look at what's going on the weekly. We've got a move to the upside, and this is happening below the zero line. So I've got a little bit of room. It doesn't look like a lot of room, but I do have some room for this to move up before hitting resistance on this time frame. So I think this is a little bit different than the square setup. The square had already hit the zero line. This one has a little bit of room to get there. So I wouldn't have a problem potentially looking at this on the daily chart and look at what this is forming. We have a downtrend line break. We have a test. I think coming back up through here, I would definitely have an interest. And again, here's the one. This is the first entry. I don't take that when there's overrun. And then we get our pullback. And when this comes back up through the next time in a low ADX condition, you want to take out the highs of all this area here. We look for a breakout to the upside as our signal. Now, you can take that and know that the target for this move is the 18-month. When we go up anywhere near the 18-month, that's all I'm looking for. I'm going to get out. Okay, well, we've run out of time. Thanks for watching. If you have any requests, send them to stocktalk@stockcharts.com. Have a great week, and we'll see you next time.
Hey, Grayson Rose here with StockCharts. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed that video. If you did, consider giving it a like down below, maybe leave us a comment, and if you're new to the channel, you can subscribe at the link up above. We're gonna bring you daily content from an incredible collection of technical analysts and financial experts.